Welcome everybody to our Communications Committee 2021. I want to thank you all for one, just your service that you provide as a bar counselor in general, and especially on this, well, and two, on this particular committee. I know we all we do so much in every other arena, and I just want to thank you myself for your service as a bar counselor in general. With that, I thought we talked about it, Peter and I, and Brian and I, we all talked about that we don't think that we have any new committee members. But I think
Yeah, we don't. I don't think we have any new counselors or anyone
right,
who, other than
Ms. Hayes, and I don't see her on here.
yeah.
I don't see her as an advisory member. I don't see her on. So unless someone just feels like we need to do introductions, I will skip that portion just to save a little bit of time. And we'll move on because I think, as you all have seen, we're all just chit chatting. I think we all know each other pretty well.
Dorothy, I think we just need to make sure we do the ethics statement to.
Oh my goodness. I totally missed that part. Yes. So ethics act statement. It is the duty of the committee members to avoid conflicts of interest and appearances of conflicts of interest in performing the duties as a member of the Communications Committee in North Carolina State Bar. Any member of the committee who is aware of any personal conflicts or appearances thereof with respect to the matters before this committee should disclose those at the meeting. So thank you for that, Peter. You keep me on track for sure. I have it on here and I skipped over it. All right. So next, moving on to committee history. Brian, you want to go?
I'm going to do it again, Dorothy.
Okay.
The minutes to do the October 2020 minutes.
I don't know why I keep doing that. And I'm sitting
That's
here
right.
looking
I
at
move that we approve the minutes from October 2020.
I second.
All right. So it has been moved and properly seconded.
And you're going to get a poll to vote on the poll, please, because the voting buttons in Zoom, we learned this morning, have been changed and they're not reliable to do a vote count with the yes, no buttons anymore. So we're going to try to be doing this through the polling process. It's always something.
So go ahead and vote there.
Yep, we're good. 15-0.
All right. Cool beans.
16. All right.
All right. So now I think I am now officially at this place. I don't know why I want to move so fast. All right. So since we're going to bypass introduction, we're going to move on to committee history and then a purpose. I think, Brian, you could give us kind of a little overview of because you gave me such a great one over this committee history and kind of how we got to where we are. And we can go from there. I do want to say first too that, well, go ahead. I'll let Brian start with that.
Sure. Well, thank you, Dorothy. And I'll just keep this brief. I know you all, like we talked about, were on the committee last year, but I think it's always a good reminder to think about where we came from and where we're going to go, or where we can go. We started off as the social media committee a couple of years ago, and Margaret Hunt was president and appointed a committee of counselors to look into whether the State Bar needs to get onto social media. And that committee, after addressing some of the issues related to social media and our involvement just in getting our message out there, I think evolved into this bigger, kind of more broad view of how do we communicate the State Bar's message effectively and to the right folks. And, understanding that different audiences will probably require different approaches and strategies and things of that nature. So, that's where we kind of came from. And of course, we've kind of evolved not just our thought process, but also our abilities. The 2020, as much as everything got just shut down and thrown out for 2020, the interesting thing, I think, is that we made some pretty significant leaps for our communications efforts with the State Bar during 2020, the biggest being our live streaming efforts. Zoom allows us to live stream these meetings, all State Bar meetings that we want to, onto YouTube. And that's been a huge change in terms of improving our transparency, which is something we wanted to do. Our meetings are for the most part open, and we want folks to be able to come in and observe, but we understand that everybody can't make it to Raleigh. So that's I think that's where we've come from, where we're going, and I think we're just looking forward to the future to see how we can continue this trend of communicating our message effectively to the members of the public as well as the profession.
All right, thank you for that, Brian. And moving on, I want to acknowledge here Ms. Heidi Bloom and the great work she did as the chair from last year. Yes. And say that, you know, when we were talking about kind of how we wanted to move forward this year, one of the things that I made a point to say to Brian and Peter is that, you know, Heidi started some really, really good things, her and Mark, and especially with the podcast and all those different things. And my goal would be to continue those things moving forward and improving on those, or, you know, expanding those things in any way that we can expand those. And then looking for ways that we can communicate better with our bar members. One of those things being revamping our bar counselor newsletter. And I know we'll talk a little bit about that. And I would like to invite Peter to talk about that, and kind of how they used to create those and provide those to bar counselors, and how we want to do a better push this year, or starting this year moving forward with revamping those and encouraging our bar counselors to do those and disseminate that information out to the different lawyers in the different constituencies and things. And likewise, I would like for us to really try, you know, take a more direct measure in trying to speak with our local bars by way of the executive directors, and, you know, really doing a bigger push for trainings and working with them. We have such, as everyone knows, and if you ever get to work really, really closely with them, you see even better, you know, all of our staff attorneys and everyone there at State Bar, they do really good work there, as well as and one of those things being providing trainings. They're like a wealth of knowledge. And so I have been able, and I'm sure a lot of you have too, if you haven't, please make sure that you participate in one, been able to participate in some of the trainings that they've provided, and they're all phenomenal. And so I remind you all about the counselor responsibilities for the communications committee. And, you know, that we created, I think it was last year, right? Wasn't that, I believe it was, if not last year, 2 years ago. Yeah, I thought it's been some time now. But those counselor responsibilities, if you could all just revisit those and look at those and remind other counselors about those, which includes arranging for in-person updates of State Bar activities and just different things, a myriad of things. Okay, so moving along, I will ask for Brian. I believe you kind of talked a little bit about it with the live stream, and so we'll move to the 2020 fourth quarter recap. If you could give us an update on the live streaming, and we'll move from there.
Absolutely. So we didn't have as much live streaming activity as the prior quarter. You'll probably remember at the October meeting, we had something like, I think 13 or 14 different meetings streamed between the July and October meetings. We didn't have as many meetings occur during this final quarter, but there's one thing that, but nevertheless, like I said, on that note, I'll say that there are meetings that took place. They are on YouTube. We are archiving these things still on YouTube. Primarily, there was a meeting of Mark Enriquez's regulatory change committee, as well as another meeting of the committee studying the potential inclusion of anti-discrimination language into the rules of professional conduct. The thing that was a little different this past quarter that I want to point out to you all, and Dorothy, I'll kind of let you take it after I just introduce this, but the DHC had a hearing in November, and this was a hearing that garnered a lot of media inquiries and just local interest from the local bar. And of course, with COVID, we did not want to have a massive crowd in that courtroom. We really couldn't logistically set it up. So what we did, and by we, I mean Peter gets the credit for figuring out a way to live stream the audio via Facebook. And I think this is one of those things where I will just kind of, as an aside, say that we're excited about the potential for new technology and being able to live stream some of this stuff, because what Peter had to do was essentially hook up a speaker that he then put his phone next to capture the audio for the stream. But it worked. It ultimately worked. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen, because I want you all to see what it looked like. All right, so we have, this is our State Bar Facebook page. And like I said, what Peter did, he streamed the audio through Facebook. We weren't able to figure it out, or at least we weren't able to stream the audio through YouTube because of their different restrictions. So we used the Facebook platform. And we had a ton of engagement. A lot of folks listened, and a lot of folks were commenting. And I'm not going to go through all of the comments, but you can see here, just in this particular one, there were 82 comments on this particular audio. There were 481 comments registered on this other audio stream. And you kind of go through 40 comments on this other one. But I think this experience kind of highlighted an interesting kind of, I guess, the interesting problem that we're always dealing with, specifically with the disciplinary process. It's very clear that there were a number of folks that were upset with the outcome of this DHC proceeding. And they said as much on these different comments that you see on our Facebook page. But I'll just kind of say that, Peter was making efforts. He was monitoring this during the proceeding, and he was trying to make efforts to clarify confusion as it came up in the comments. Like who is prosecuting here? Who are the lawyers that are in charge? And Peter would respond not to every single comment. Clearly, that's just going to be impossible. But just to kind of say, the State Bar's Office of Counsel is prosecuting the case. They serve as the prosecutor in this particular matter, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, we get a result, and it became a lot of comments like, why would the State Bar do this? Why isn't the State Bar holding this person more accountable because they disagreed with the decision? And, there's only so much that you could do. And I don't think Peter tried to engage in any Facebook comments there to say the Disciplinary Hearing Commission is an independent tribunal. The State Bar argued for a harsher outcome. I believe they argued for an active suspension, if not disbarment, and the person ended up with a state suspension. And so, it was that point where suddenly you're trying to clarify and distinguish between the State Bar's Office of Counsel and the Disciplinary Hearing Commission, and just kind of this, I guess, just a great example of how we need to continue to try to get our message out there about what the State Bar is, how we function, and take advantage of these opportunities where folks are actually looking at us to understand more about what the regulatory structure is here in North Carolina. So again, I would, I guess, encourage you all, to the extent that you're interested, go to Facebook, and you can see some of those streams. You can see how the audio played out. But it does kind of present some questions, I think, about, broadcasting disciplinary cases to begin with. That's something that we historically have not done. And we did this for the first time on our own because of the COVID concern. We certainly have had disciplinary hearings that have been broadcast out of the building, but it's usually done by the news outlets like WRAL or something of that nature. This is the first one we did on our own. I think it brings up an interesting policy question that perhaps this committee would want to discuss over the course of the year.
So with that said, we would like for you all to think about that, about whether or not we want to study that particular issue as to whether or not we should continue to broadcast all or some select few or whatever kind of selection process that we, come up with, on whether or not we should broadcast those DHC hearings. Of course, we would definitely invite the DHC chair to weigh in on that and how we should, look at that and study that particular question, as well as I requested that we present this to you all for you to start thinking about, and then we look at as to whether or not we really want to study this completely at a later time, and probably our next quarterly meeting, so that we can get more data, because I know that a lot of us are data driven, and we would like to get a little bit more data involved as it relates to some other DHC hearings that might take place that could be streamed, and whether it's streamed or not, if we get feedback from the public that says, if they don't stream it, say, hey, you all didn't stream it. I know that it was streamed before. Why is it not being streamed? And so we have that feedback. Or if it does, if it is streamed, how many people actually do log on and look at it and observe, and what kind of feedback we get in that regard. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I had a couple, sorry, I was pressing my space bar. I had a couple comments. One is I like the 400 more or less participants. I think that's a big number for the state bar. I mean, for Facebook. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that's good. The second thing is I can't see exactly how it interacted, Peter, but was it more like just you using Facebook to respond, or was it set up like a live stream kind of format?
So yeah, it was set up like a live stream where it was all coming, all the chats and everything were coming in live and just one after another, and I could enter the chat and make a statement, and it would come from the state bar, and I would post a link to the disciplinary page or post information or answer a question as it relates to the format of the hearing and what they're determining in phase 1 and what they're determining in phase 2 and those kinds of things, and try to answer those questions without ever answering any kind of case specific things that they were asking. But it did require kind of live moderation in that case. Yeah.
So I don't know if this is good in the form of a motion or just a suggestion or a proposal, but my thoughts are that, part of what we're trying to do is educate not only about the different opportunities that people have, through technology and our Twitter and Facebook, which is what we've been trying to elevate as far as, what's available. So educating on what is available, but also educating people more about what the state bar does. And as you saw, a lot of people don't really understand the dynamics of the disciplinary proceedings. So given that, my suggestion, I guess, or if you want it to be a formal proposal or motion, would be that we select, we be selective in what we stream and calculate it in that, because I think if we do everything, then my guess is that Peter would not have the time to do it. And I think that there is a value in the chatting and the live streaming and the commenting. I think that we can benefit from that. And so if we select certain cases that we decide we're going to put online and set it up where Peter or somebody else can respond through this live streaming and providing input, then we can kind of start with that and see and build on it and see what kind of responses and whether we feel like it's worthwhile, and just build on it. And if it's great, then we can add to it. And if it's sufficient with what we're doing, then we just keep it the way it is. But
so that is exactly what my thoughts were about that. And so that we can study it and see kind of where we are with it. But I think you're saying a little bit more than what I was initially saying, which is they are already going to be selective with what is streamed between now and our next meeting or live stream. We know that all of those things are open to the public, but the question and the study that I would like for us to look at or consider looking at moving forward is whether or not we should make it mandatory for all of those things to be live streamed. And so I don't know why my phone is talking to me right now. What I was saying is that, so that is what I was suggesting that we do between now and the next meeting, is have them be selective, Brian and Peter, and deciding on what things will be live streamed so we can receive that data and feedback as to how many people logged on, what kind of interest we got, what kind of questions we got, all of those different things. So we could use that to really study how we want to look at this moving forward and make it a mandatory thing moving forward or not. But it sounds like you're suggesting that we just do that. We just have them, like it actually be a requirement now. Is that what you're suggesting for now?
yeah, I guess, I've been on the communications committee since it started, and we're still kind of developing it. I realize that even though it's been a few years, it's kind of a work in progress. But from my perspective, I'm wondering if we, if it's helpful for us to have some, like a formal motion on something like this, if everybody agrees that it's good and we want to keep it going. And this might be a question, I don't know if Barbara or Cole.
Yeah, Barbara does have her hand up here, I think.
For for you all to, Peter, you two, and Brian, everybody, as far as the administration of this, is it beneficial for us to be more specific and say, okay, this is a great idea, let's run with it. Let's do a motion to outline exactly what your charges are, as opposed to recommendations and thoughts. Like, do you want us to be more proactive as a committee to fine tune what you're charged to do?
I think that'd be great. And I think, but Barbara had her hand up to comment, but I would just quickly say, Andrea, that I think we need to do this carefully and with some study, because there's policy issues here that aren't just, we want people to learn about the bar. I mean, this is someone's disciplinary life that is being put out into the public, that I think we need to be careful and, but don't jump into it too quickly until we're all comfortable with the decision that we're making, because there are matters that come up in DHC that aren't just, this guy's a terrible person, let's take him down. I mean, there are people whose troubles are going to be shown, and that it's something that we need to be very careful about in doing. So I'm not opposed to it in the long run in terms of transparency. I just, I think it requires some study to come up with what the solution is, and then ask for a charge from this committee on what the committee's recommendation is. But
so if I like do a formal motion to engage in a study on whether this is something we want to continue, and if it is continued, how we would want to structure it, is that helpful as opposed to just?
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful.
Okay,
Yeah.
well then I'll go ahead and make a motion that we set up a committee to study it and make recommendations on whether we should continue doing it, and if we do continue to do it, what the format and the structure and the goals and objectives would be.
I want to get Barbara in here since she had her hand up for a while.
I was just gonna say one thing, Andre. When you looked at the 400 some comments, it wasn't 400 some people. It was a handful of people, and in this case, you know, maybe they had very good reasons for what they were saying. But if you want to take it to the other side, as Peter was saying, if somebody's just unhappy with what's going on and they're just using this platform to just totally trash them on social media, you almost have two trials going on, one by Facebook and one in the proceeding. And again, that's what happened here in this case. And these folks still, every time a state bar posts a post on anything, they're bringing back up this hearing because they're so angry about it. Not saying that we wouldn't do it for that reason, but it's something to consider. And then Peter, Brian, I guess you've looked at or will look at what other jurisdictions are doing.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I want to, I haven't looked at the widespread all 50 states in a while. I know there are other jurisdictions. I remember there was something, Maryland is broadcasting their stuff because they're being by Zoom. I don't know if that's their policy or if that's kind of a current requirement in this COVID time. But I wanted to suggest that when we do this study, that we look at other jurisdictions to see what they're doing, as well as get some input from both the Office of Counsel and the defense bar that's out there to see what their reaction is to this, because I know, as you know, in my former life at the bar and the Office of Counsel, there were certainly some cases that I would feel uncomfortable having broadcast because people were dealing with very personal issues, and it just, I wouldn't want to put that on a public stage necessarily. So that's where the selection becomes, you know, important, but also kind of tricky in terms of having a consistent policy. So I agree, Barbara. I think we need to look at a lot of different things here, and that can all be a part of that study.
Heidi?
And I wondered, y'all, had the live streaming of it just taken place because of COVID? Was that the reason it was started? Because I think we have to be really careful what the purpose in doing that was. I understand it's a public proceeding, right? But put yourself back into normal times when you would have a DHC hearing in the nice courtroom. People couldn't just blurt out in the middle of the proceeding what they thought, and then have state bar personnel sort of respond or tamper it down. And so I think you have to be pretty mindful of what you're trying to accomplish. And if there are boundaries to that, everyone's opinion is their opinion, and they're entitled certainly to have it and to air it, but in what forum, I guess.
Or maybe you can turn comments off.
Well, and
Right,
so
and
that's one of the things you could do in the long run when we get better live stream equipment is do it back on YouTube with comments and everything disabled. That's an option that this committee could, consider doing too.
Let me
Catherine?
say,
Oh.
sorry.
Well, I'll renew my motion that we appoint a committee.
Catherine Fry?
Oh, sorry. I had just pointed out what you had just said about the comments and making a determination of not only if we live stream, what are the parameters around what is allowed, whether or not comments. The other was whether or not, and I know Brian had said talk to the Office of Counsel, but whether or not there's a budding rule change or issue here, and whether or not defendants, I call them defendants, but people would want to say, I object to this being live streamed. And so I don't really know what the rules are, if they can object or anything like that, but I had just wondered about that piece of it too, just to add to the list. I would support Andrea's motion, but that was just something to look into.
Is that your second of her motion? Okay.
Yes.
We have a motion on the table to set up, and motion at a proper second, to set up a committee to study whether we continue live streaming those DHC hearings and how we would go about selecting the ones to be live streamed. Did I get that correct, Andrea? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Peter, you gonna help us with the?
Yeah, I was to see if there's any other discussion.
Yeah. I know we kind of did that a little backwards in discussing before we got to it.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say real briefly, just as a corollary to just another example of how this is being unfolded and determined recently, the Workers' Comp Commission, the Industrial Commission, recently had to start doing hearings by WebEx. Well, comp hearings have always been open to the public, but of course, no one shows up really except for, a few people who might be for another hearing or witnesses. So now, these live stream, these WebEx, anyone can join them. We talk about intimate details, medical records of the plaintiff, for example. And so far, this is just anecdotally, what they've done has been very patchwork, which is basically if one of the lawyers wants to show a medical record, they shut off the live stream, which to me, it's like, is it public or isn't it? This is all, my whole point is, I think, I'm going to third Andrea's motion because I think it is really a new developing area, and it doesn't just translate to say something's public, open to the public, so then it can be blasted across the world necessarily. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of people that this committee is going to need to reach out to other court agencies and so forth about how they're handling it, because I just think it's a whole new world. So that's my 2 cents. Okay.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? All right, I think we're ready for the vote, Peter.
All right, that's unanimous, 17-0.
All right, so we'll get working on creating that committee. And we'll move that up a little bit sooner to start working on that. All right, so moving on to database software project. Peter, I think that's for you to discuss. I know that was set to be introduced in November of last year with a rollout mid 2021. So if you could.
Yep. So we've executed our contract, and we're in the design and phase, and working on a new database with ThoughtSpan Technology, a company in Charlotte. We're very excited about it. We're hopeful of rollout sometime mid 2021 with better platforms for CLE and membership, especially for lawyers to use and access and see all of their requirements all in one place. It'll allow us to do better communications. It'll allow us to send better notices and reminders for owing dues and all of that stuff. I think it's just going to be a much better experience for lawyers. One login, everything all on one page. And so we're just plugging away on it. The hope is that it will also allow for better public access to our discipline Office of Counsel to be able to file complaints online and track their case statuses and all of those things that we will be able to do when we roll this out, the portion for the Office of Counsel as well. So it's going as planned. We got the funding for it in the budget, and I don't foresee any issues other than just obviously any project has its hiccups that we'll have to deal with. But I think the lawyers will be very pleased with this when we get it rolled out sometime this year.
Awesome. Any questions, feedback on the database software project? All right, good deal. So now moving on to 2021 first quarter plan, starting with podcast. And Mr. Enriquez, please forgive me because I did not speak with you beforehand, and I should have, but I'm hoping that you would still be our go-to guy on the podcast. I know we consider you the podcast man, and will assist us with that. Is that definitely?
Absolutely. Happy to do it. Enjoy doing it. So
okay. So Peter, do you have any other updates other on plan topics, additional topics? Of course, we would invite you all to give us any topics that you would like for the folks, our podcast crew, to actually work on and put out there. If you're willing to participate in the podcast, definitely let them know. We would love to include you. And then I'll pass it off to Peter.
Yeah, so I think the podcast with Mark interviewing Colin and Marcy was just great, and it was short and fun and educational, and so I think Mark has planned to have a conversation with Barbara as we kick off the year, and additional podcasts throughout the year about various aspects of the state bar and other people here at the bar. Mark certainly has a talent for this, and it just went off without a hitch, I think. So I was just going to play a clip for you if anyone had never heard it. But
in the third quarter, the Ethics Committee received a number of calls asking for ethics advice. How many calls did the Ethics Committee receive in the third quarter of 2020? We'll start with Colin. What's your guess on that? I don't expect you to have it memorized. As long as you're 100 or 3. 100. 100 calls is Colin's guess. Marcy, what do you think?
I have no idea. 50.
Marcy says 50. Colin said 100. I'm afraid Colin is closer, although way off. Frankly, it is 1,086 calls came into our ethics folks just in that quarter. They're very busy, and the Ethics Committee does get a report on those each quarter. 1,000 calls is actually fairly typical load for our Ethics Committee folks. Another one of our bar programs is the attorney.
So that's
now,
the perfect voice for podcast. I think.
I keep my Joe Camiso role of being investigator.
Yeah, it's very clear that Heidi had dug out dirt on everybody.
Yes, I found out from Easton that she had a little chat with Heidi.
Well, better was the stuff on Colin, what I left out.
Yeah.
We're saving that for an as needed basis.
And I'm very fond of you for
Right.
that.
You're up next, Barbara.
I'm so afraid.
We had 70 listens, and the more that we put out, the more content that we put out, the more regular it gets in people's minds, and you'll increase your views and listens like that. But we are on SoundCloud and Google Music and iTunes. We've got it all posted on there, so you can get it anywhere you'd like. And that's Bar Talk, the Bar Talk podcast.
Awesome. And thank you again, Mark, for continuing to do that for us.
Andrea?
It's me again. Anyway, so thoughts on this would be if there was a way that we could line up the topics ahead of time, like let's say have the next 10 podcast topics lined up and somehow publish that, so that if it goes out to the bar members and they see a topic of interest, they might flag it and listen, because I mean, I don't know how we're publishing or publicizing the podcast right now, but it would be nice to see a list. So if it's something, like I said, if somebody's interested in it, they can flag it.
Do y'all have the numbers on, in line with what Andrea is saying, do y'all have the numbers on kind of how many, I know you said for that one, it was, how many did you say listened?
We had about 70 listens, I think.
Okay. Is that typical?
Yeah, that was more than the first one, but it's still pretty low considering I would imagine a lot of those were members of the council that turned it on when we emailed it out to everyone. So we're still trying to break through, as you'd say. We're working at the Cheesecake Factory in Hollywood right now instead of actually making it. So we're trying.
Gotcha. All right. So you get that feedback, Mark, on the kind of the topics and moving forward.
Yes.
It's possible for us to get them, like have them live.
I think the biggest challenge in my experience, and I'm happy to continue hosting them, I think figuring out the guests and getting the commitment from the guests and lining them up is a challenge. I know last year, we had circulated a number of potential topics. I know Heidi had several other good ideas where we were trying to line up some folks. I think it's a matter of getting a commitment for that guest and getting it done. I would be reluctant about publishing any kind of schedule just because it's often, it does take longer and is a little more challenging to get everything lined up than we might think. But I definitely welcome ideas on topics and guests. I mean, I think that's, I think that would be good. I think we have to kind of decide if we want to do more. This last one is more of a personality type podcast, get to know the leaders with some fun facts thrown in. And again, thanks to Heidi for coming up with those fun facts. I think we could continue to do that. We've talked about doing more substantive ones around some of the diversity issues we're grappling with, or some of the specific things the ethics committee may be facing. And, I welcome thoughts from this group about whether we want to do one or the other, or a combination of both in terms of kind of what the focus of the Bar Talk podcast should be.
I think last meeting we had talked about maybe overlapping with the publications committee topics. Like if we know an article was coming out and written by somebody that might be willing also to do a podcast with you. So we shouldn't forget about that, because I think that there might be some benefit in doing it through, having the podcast and then being able to talk about the article that will be coming out in publications. Just another thing to think about for topics.
Okay.
Steve?
I have too. When we have those, like when you have the guests that you invite on to speak with you, most of those have been other bar counselor members, right? Bar counselors. Okay.
So far, that's what we've done. But again, I think we could potentially do a broader audience if we want.
Okay. Have we thought about, or have we done this in that we've pushed for those, like say for instance, you get bar counselor from Wake County and that's, their county, and have you done like a push to send that podcast information to that Wake County bar and all of those ancillary bars or whatever, just so they'll know their particular member that actually is on, and it kind of could start there, and then the buzz could maybe possibly grow from there. I know it would be too much work to send it out to every single bar, different bar associations.
Well, right. We should have a more organized plan on disseminating the podcast when it's done. Right when we got this one done, we posted it on our website, posted on social media, but we didn't directly send it to particular associations or things like that, which is, it is kind of promoting it is something that we didn't focus on as much as we did try to get it produced. So that's another step that we need to work on.
Okay, I think that'd be a good thing. Because I know that local bars are always looking for content anyway, to be able to get out to their members and on their website and all of that good stuff. And then people will get used to seeing that there, and then we'll, just kind of have it.
Right.
That'll be formed from there. All right, good deal.
Steve, you had a hand up?
Who did? I'm sorry.
I just want to pick up on Mark's suggestion. Those of us who have served on the Publications Committee have adopted Gray's philosophy of trying to come up with material that is wet and bold. I would think the same principle would apply here. And the diversity issue is pretty interesting. And some of you may have participated in the last subcommittee meeting where Brian and Carmen gave really fascinating hypotheticals on here's some conduct by an attorney. Is this conduct something that if it came to you as a bar disciplinary attorney, would you does it make the cut or to the disciplinary committee for something that we would prosecute or not? And it led to some, it was fascinating to me and would be something that I think would be riveting to an audience. And similar to the way Mark handled the question about the number of ethics inquiries, people, that's interesting when you sort of challenge people to think and they can, of course, in that format, respond and you get a dialogue going.
I think it could, I like the idea, Steve, and I like the idea of maybe having, maybe you could be a guest, but we could also have someone who's advocating for, a rule change and someone opposed to the idea of the rule change and kind of have a dialogue/debate in the podcast to help people understand the issues and perspectives. I do think that might generate real listenership and help people understand some of what we're grappling with. So that has appealed to me.
All right, so we'll definitely get together and kind of, formalize some of this a little better and move forward. And again, I thank you, Mark, for continuing on serving in that role. Anything else? All right, I'm trying to do a better job of eyeing everywhere so I can catch hands raised up. All right, so next we have courtroom, conference room, technology study. I think, Peter, you were going to give us an update about those funds that we received and all of that.
Yeah, we got some good news. We requested some funding from the State Bar Foundation, which is a foundation that was set up when we built the building to raise funds to support the building. And so since we are seeking some funding to improve our in-building technology to allow us to improve our live streaming of meetings like the ethics committee, when we get back into the building, we're going to struggle with how to live stream something like the ethics committee because there's so many people in there and trying to get everybody to be heard at the same time. Well, we've found some equipment and some cameras that are kind of like 360 type cameras that can pinpoint on particular people when they're talking, and some other things like some other video equipment that we got $5,000 in funding from the Bar Foundation, State Bar Foundation, to purchase some live streaming equipment. This is not going to be the big technological change that we need to do for the courtroom, to upgrade the courtroom and to kind of get the new equipment in, because we're kind of at the end of life for a lot of our technology inside the courtroom. That I believe we're going to be conducting, beginning this quarter, starting to conduct the studies, what we need to improve our courtroom and in-building real kind of built-in technology, and hopefully have that as a budget proposal for 2022 is the plan. So there was two separate kind of actions. One was this short term, we need to improve the ability to live stream. We need to improve the ability to have some of these meetings accessible, make them accessible online. And then next is we got to improve our kind of courtroom and in-building technology. And so the first part of it, we're going to be able to, once the budget's approved, we're going to be able to make those purchases and hopefully have everything ready and trained and know what we're doing by the time we're allowed to have in-person meetings again, to be able to do a much better job streaming meetings. And if the committee and the council is of the opinion that we need to start streaming hearings, then this equipment's going to help us with that too.
Awesome. Any questions? Feedback? All right, good deal. So moving to communicating courthouse closures. So this came about on the agenda because I have heard from so many different attorneys, especially those in private practice, of which may include some of you all who have experienced this, where COVID has shut down a courthouse and you are traveling around different counties and you don't have anywhere, you didn't know that there was somewhere for you to go and look and find out, or call or contact and find out whether or not the courthouse is closed due to COVID, and you're driving and you show up at the courthouse and you find out then that the courthouse is closed due to COVID. And so I did not know, and I suggested, I said, there should be a way that we could find this information out. It should be some centralized place in which we could find this information out. And unbeknownst to me, it is on the AOC website, the NC Court's website. Peter, okay, I was gonna say, I have it ready to share too. So Peter can go through this, but you see here that this particular, what you see in red are the counties in which have been closed due to COVID-19. As you already probably are aware, any weather closings or delays or anything like that, that's communicated on this website too, but they have this particular map with these counties in red, or they'll include the counties in red that are closed. That is specifically for COVID-19 closures. And I just wasn't aware of that. And I participated in a lot of different meetings of this before this meeting, sometime months prior. And there was a lot of talk about how to communicate this. And no one there actually said it's on the AOC website. So I would like for us to assist in some kind of way with getting this information out to the different bars, associations, the different local bars, so that they would know, to be able to tell their members that this is where you can go and find out where these closures, instead of just, folks having to call the clerk's office, and if they're closed and nobody's there to answer the call, not being able to get that information until they actually physically show up at the courthouse. But some kind of way to get this information out to the different local bars, and maybe informing them that to include that on their website, a link to this website and all that good stuff. So that's one of the things that I thought about. And so we want, of course, because you all know that unlike weather closings, COVID-19 closings can happen kind of instantly, or it can be planned, or it can happen right away. It's all different various ways in which it happens, because the authority on whether or not, or the decision-making authority as to whether or not the court's closed, or the courthouse in general, or if it's just the court's closed, but the clerk's office is open and all of that, those are left to the local districts to make those decisions. So a lot of times we don't know that information. So that is one of the things that I would like for us to assist with in getting that information out, because I think that we're going to be in this COVID, as you all probably agree, we're going to be in this situation for quite some time. And I would like for us to assist in that way in helping our members.
Dorothy, that might be something that we can do via an email to all of the lawyers, because we sent out a bunch of resources at the beginning of the pandemic. And then mostly since then, we've just been sending out letters and emails that on behalf of the AOC. Mm-hmm. But perhaps we could put together another list of COVID resources, including a link to the courthouse closures and courthouse information site in the email. So maybe we can put together a draft for that.
That'd be awesome. Is that
if I can help? Oh, sorry, Dorothy. I was just going to say, those of you that are looking at home to where you can find this, I will confess, I go to nccourts.gov, and I have a hard time finding it. It feels buried in there.
It is.
But if you just go to nccourts.gov/closings, that's the website. So for those trying it at home, take a look, nccourts.gov/closings, just for your own reference material.
I like the note for Chatham County's Superior Courthouse is closed right now, and it says there's a note on the door. Please read it carefully.
Right. So you actually got to go there. Classic, right? Classic. Did you have a question or a comment, or that was just you agreeing, Marcy?
Marcy, yeah.
I did the wrong hand. I have a question. Okay, I'm a dinosaur. So Peter, if you do send that out, can we send the letter that the Chief Justice sent to Governor Cooper regarding the vaccination? Wouldn't that be a letter is that something that we should send to the members of the?
Yeah, I think it'll, that issue will come, depending on what the state bar does as well. I think we might have a letter or we might not. So we'll see, and then determine what we want to do in sending out on behalf of Chief. anything we sent out for Chief Justice Beasley or on behalf of AOC was at the request of AOC. And so we don't necessarily want to do it on our own until if we get some guidance from the courts. Yeah.
I've sent it. My district wanted to see it.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of lawyers that are questioning whether or not lawyers should get the vaccination and want to know if anything's being done about it. That's being
Yeah.
asked by a lot of lawyers. I didn't know. Anyway, okay.
Anything else? All right. As for new business, I'll just kind of throw this back out there again under new business. If I invite Peter again, I know I got you doing a whole lot of talking about the counselor newsletter. And if you could just kind of remind everybody those, okay, so you're just so ahead of me. So you have that there. And so what we talked about, as I talked about earlier, is us trying to do a better job of getting information out to our individual members in our different districts. And so I remember when I first came on, or before I came on, actually, one of our bar counselors from Durham used to always do this letter and send it out. And we would get the information as just general members. And so I talked to Peter about this, and he said that he could definitely, what he did, and I'll let you speak about this, kind of piggyback off of this, Peter, if you would. But if you could just describe what you did, what work you put into creating these and how you provided the templates and the information to the different bar counselors and all of that good stuff, and how we could assist with disseminating the information.
Sure. So we put together these newsletters originally with the ability to let counselors customize them, add their own message at the beginning of the newsletter and send it out. And then we would send it out. At the beginning of this, we even gave a list of choices of articles and links and let the counselors pick what they wanted to include. And it really was very well received. There's no question, I think, both by the counselors and their constituents. But it was an incredible amount of work, just trying to get back and forth emails with each individual counselor and design their individual template and then prepare it and get it emailed out was a good week or two of your month just doing just that. And so it became untenable to continue doing it that way. So we, as you know now, every lawyer in North Carolina gets the same synopsis that's sent out after the meeting. I'm of the opinion that there's a middle ground somewhere that we can come back to a way where we have a newsletter that is sent by the counselor with that. So you get those touch points and the outreach from the counselor to their constituent. We need to figure out a plan for it. But an idea would be to come up with the template email and design, have a design for everyone and provide it to the counselor and let them add their little message at the top and provide the email list to the counselor and have them send it from their email when they are ready. I think that might save us some time on the back and forth, as if we provided the counselors with the package and just said, here, can you send this out, and put the responsibility on the counselor to reach out to their constituents. I don't know if that's, exactly how that will work yet, but I do think there's some sort of middle ground from it going from kind of a generic thing that everyone gets so you don't feel that relationship with your counselor back to something that we can all, it helps your relationship with your district and probably helps the lawyers makes the lawyers read it more and engage because they know it's coming from you and not just a computer generated email from the state bar.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you, Tom. Any other comments or feedback about that? Do we need like a formal motion or anything for that to take place, or is that something you can just take on? Okay.
Yeah, you don't need a motion. We'll come prepared in April with a plan, if not before, we're going to kind of do a feasibility on this and come up with a study to make it, not a study, but with a proposal and some samples, how it might look.
Okay, good deal. I appreciate that. All right, that is all I have. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to discuss in new business? All right, so with that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, wait, before we do that, I did see Miss Hayes jumped on, Deary Hayes jumped on. Forgive me. And I know I said we were going to bypass introductions, but since she is the only new member onto our committee, I would like to introduce her, Miss Deary Hayes. She had some problems trying to get on, and so that's why she wasn't on at the very beginning, but it was not her fault. I will say that on her part. And she is the director of our pro bono clinic at North Carolina Central University School of Law. And so she is coming on to serve with us on this particular committee. And so we welcome you, Ms. Hayes. We are super excited.
Thank you, Dorothy, for that fine introduction, and hello, everyone.
You are
It's
welcome.
been a very informative committee meeting, and I welcome the work that we're going to do together. Thank you.
And would you all please indulge me, since this is her very first committee meeting. I know I said we weren't going to do this, but if you could just quickly say your name and what district you're from, so that she would get a feel for who's on here with us too. And
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm going to just kind of call people out in the order that you are on mine. I have Ms. Morris starting at the top.
Ina Morris, Mecklenburg County, 26th District.
All right, Mr. Thompson.
I'm from Elizabeth City, and I'm in the 1st District.
Okay, we got Brian Oden. I see Jay Lund. I'm not sure who.
That's Jeff Lundgren. He's one of our paralegals at the bar.
Okay. And Mr. Robertson?
I'm Steve Robertson. I'm from Greensboro, the 18th Judicial District, and I met Daria briefly at our publications meeting. She came in, I think, by accident, but she should know that all counselors are always welcome at almost all.
Yes, very much by accident.
So it's good to meet you again, Daria.
But she shared with me if it was a good accident, because she actually got a feel for how the meetings go and take place and all of that good stuff. So everything happens for a reason, right?
Dorothy, we didn't hear who you just called on.
Andrea.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm Andrea Capua. I'm from the 24th Judicial District.
And then I'm sure you know Peter. Mark.
Yes, I know Peter.
Yep. Hey, welcome aboard. I'm Mark Enriquez. I'm from Charlotte, which is the 26th Judicial District.
And then we have Colin.
Hey, dear. I'm Colin Willoughby, past president bar in Wake County.
And Mr. Brown, Todd Brown.
Todd Brown from the 26th Judicial District down in Charlotte. Welcome aboard.
And then we have Heidi.
Yeah, this is Heidi Bloom from Raleigh, 10th Judicial District.
And then we have the Madam Barbara Christie.
Hi, Daria. We've talked on the phone, and I look forward to meeting you in person.
And Patrick Williams.
Patrick Williams, Wake County, 10th Judicial District. Welcome.
And Armstrong.
Hi, I'm Marcy Armstrong, Vice President, and I'm from Johnston County, and welcome. Look forward to meeting you.
And Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Davis Hammond. I'm from Rowan County, Salisbury, North Carolina. It's the 27th District.
And I know I keep skipping over the state bar staff, dearie, because I know you know all of them already, but then we have Miss Alice Mine. I'm sure you know her very well. Who wouldn't know?
Absolutely.
Hi, Daria.
Kevin.
Join us.
I think you called me Dorothy. Kevin Williams
Yes.
from the 31st Judicial District, which is Winston-Salem, Forsyth County.
Awesome. Kia, Miss Lewis.
Hey, I'm Takia Lewis. I'm from Ahoskie, Hertford County, and it's the 7th District.
Fortner is what you listed there.
Yes, it's a hard first name. Hi, Daria. This is Dion Fortner, and I'm from the 13th District, which is Johnston County. Welcome.
And Judge, sir, you can introduce yourself next.
Oh, I'm not even used to being a judge. Hi, this is George Cleland. I'm from Winston-Salem with Kevin Williams. That's the 31st Judicial District.
Miss Fry.
Catherine Fry, Wake County, 10th Judicial.
And Anna. I know y'all like, she keeps going back and forth. She's calling some of us by last name, some of us by first name.
Hey there, Daria. My name's Anna Hamrick. I'm from Asheville, which is the 40th district. It's nice to meet you like this. I hope to meet you in person soon.
And then last but not least, I think, Tom, I think that's it.
Tom Anglem from the 2nd District, Beaufort, Martin, Washington, Carroll, Hyde, all the way stuck out here on the east. Welcome to the committee. And I'm in the 2nd District.
All right, so I think that's everybody. I didn't miss anybody, did I? Thank you all for indulging me in that way so that we can introduce ourselves to Daria. I think that you all would appreciate her.
Yes, thank you all so much for the welcome. And I look forward to working with you all. I didn't want to say thank you after each one, but collectively, thank you so much.
All right, with that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn now?
So moved, Anna.
All right. All right, it has been moved and second. I don't